Welcome to another session of Lunch and Learn. One of the things we want to start off with today is thank the Department of Labor and Licensing for partnering with the HVACR Association to present these updates on code. As always, we have Tony Woodard, who is the Chief Inspector for the state of Arkansas HVACR program. And once again, we have Charles Covington, who's the Chief Inspector for the electrical program. The very first part of our program will not really have much to do with Charles, but boy, on the end, are you going to be glad that Charles was here because he's got a lot to share. Good morning, Tony. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning.
Lunch and Learn code updates, equipment access. Tony, one of the things I want to be sure to do is say, we're not talking about anything that's new today. We're talking about that have been in code for a while.
Yes, sir. Sure has. It's been in the code since the very first code, the 91 code.
One of the things we're talking about is attic access. And I thought, well, okay, how do we put this together? Well, in order to, quote, gain access for the inspector, he's first got to know that you're there. And that takes us over into the subject of signage. First off, if you're going to be in the business, you have to have your name and your license number on your vehicle. Here's an interesting thing to me. This number 2 here at the very bottom, where you have to have a job site sign.
Yes, sir. It is a requirement. We don't have a job site size like the electrical and plumbing that stipulates in their law, a 2x2 sign. I do believe that we're working on putting that in the rules to get a specific size. But right now you could take a 10x8 card and write your number and your name down and staple it on the same board up there and you'd be legal. But your vehicle will work for change out while you're there. But when you're doing new construction and you leave that job, you must have your job site sign there, correct?
Okay, make sure I understand. If you're doing a retrofit and you've got your truck there and it's got your name and license number on it, that's okay.
Yes, sir, because you're in that day and out.
But new construction, you've got to have a job site sign.
Correct.
That really is an accommodation, isn't it? Because the way you read it, you could be more particular than that.
Sure. And it is an accommodation. I mean, we could stretch the issue, but we've discussed this at length, and by our laws, they must have their license and their name on their vehicle on 2 sides. So we, after several, discussions about this, we decided that would suffice as a job site sign on a 1-day, job change out. But new construction's a different animal. You go in, you're there a few days running ductwork. You may go back and do line set run another day, and then you're going to come back and trim out. You're going to be there more than once. And that's an ongoing job. It's not, that's a 3-month at best job in length of time.
So it's a good example of a company name and a HVACR license number on a truck. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, 3 vehicles, no signage. Oops. Now, okay, Tony, let's get real. Why does it matter? Why do we care?
Well, it matters. First, the law is clear for the consumer to know. Now, I mean, most consumers know when they're purchasing their equipment or who they contract with to buy the equipment, they know they're a licensed contract. Now, when we're rolling by a job site and if we see guys doing work, it kind of throws our cackles up, and we might drive on by if I see this other sign is going and we're busy. But when we see this and in the front yard, there's an old piece of duct work or something out, first we need to go by and verify where's the job site sign, because in this situation to the right, you see here, sure enough, no permit was pulled. They were in there doing the scope of the work. They didn't go through the city. One of this slip in, let's do our work and go out. I immediately stopped the work, made them go and buy the permit through the city before they continued to do their work.
To me, the sign just says basically that, it's like fundamental. I'm in business. I'm real. I want people to know I'm here. I'm proud of the work that I do. And I have some degree of familiarity with the trade that I'm putting myself out to do. So it's kind of like the beginning point. If you don't do that, which is not to say you won't buy a new truck and not get it done for a couple of days.
True.
All right, here's an example of just a job site sign. We've already covered that. Here's new construction. They don't exactly have a job site sign, do they?
No, sir. You can see the electrical sign on the right side, and their vehicle has the signage on it. They don't have their job site sign on new construction, which they immediately turned around the very next day and brought it back with them, which that was fine. That's absolutely fine. Just kind of reminded them of the law.
Again, here's an example of a vehicle that does have their signage, but they don't have the job site sign. Now then, let's talk about getting into an attic.
This was where what started this lunch and learn session here was, why is it my responsibility to provide access? Why do the inspectors not carry ladders on their vehicles? And here you can see on the left, you have a pull down stairwell. This is a fixed stairwell that's there. You can change out your equipment. You can call, and if the inspector doesn't get there for a day or two, then he clearly has access to get up in there and make the inspection. The one on the right is the one that's creating so much issue on the older homes.
Did you ever have to go into an attic where you had to go into a closet and go through a scuttle hole that was really too small?
Absolutely. Where the homeowner goes and gets like 5 milk crates and stacks them up on top of each other, and he'll hold your bottom of your foot and you climb up in there and you break his shelving as you're getting up in there. Absolutely.
Okay, here's the code, 10311.
Yes. Materials, the equipment, material, and label necessary for inspection shall be furnished by the contractor. That's who's going to provide that.
Well, now look there on that right, that picture. That's
not quite.
That's not quite adequate, is it? Mr. Inspector, I left the rope for you.
Yeah. And I can speak for most of us inspectors. We're not gymnasts. We couldn't climb that rope. We're not going to make it up that rope.
I couldn't get my belly through the hole. Oh my, we've all seen this, like that one on the right. Oh my.
Yes.
My.
I've got plenty of the ductwork crossing right over where you can't get up in there also.
Yeah. The minimum dimension, access dimension on the scuttle hole is
30 by 20 or large enough for the largest piece of equipment.
I don't guess you've ever been on a job where they abandoned or orphaned an old furnace, have you?
Yes. The old Duquesne furnaces at 7 foot long, they just cut them off and push them to the side up there.
Here's a drawing that you furnished us to talk about what you've got to have in being able to access to get to the furnace itself. Start off with that 20 by 30 minimum access.
Yes, and this is what we actually, for new city inspectors coming through the week-long school to be certified to be a city inspector, a municipal, a county, this is what we hand to them to give them the perfect world example. I actually have some pictures of some perfect examples with real life situation, but this is from the fire code, and the reasoning for the 20-foot distance with the perforated lines, which you're going to light up per fire code, you can only crawl on your knees within 1 minute and 38 seconds, that distance, if something was to catch on fire under you or whatever. But it's an excellent example to show you not just the 2 foot wide solid platform with the 30 by 30 standing area, but it's also going to show you the electrical requirements that Charles is going to get into further on in the show here.
Okay, so we've got to have a walkway to the equipment, 24 inches wide at the minimum, no more than 20 feet long. But you mentioned something to me earlier about it could be longer.
Right. Now, this is drawn based off the old 412, 512, 612 pitch houses from 70s, 80s. And now we've gone into 12 pitch homes. You can play basketball in there, but if you have to maintain a 6 foot level. If you can keep a 6 foot clearance of height, you can go as far as 50 feet back from your opening now if you can maintain that 6 foot level. That 6 foot height, and that means nothing crossing there. Don't start running a little 4-inch duct or anything where you have to step over it. It's unobstructed, just a clear walkway like that right there.
And then a working area.
The working area is still the same, the 30 by 30 platform. But the reasoning we're showing this is because on retrofit, if you go in to make your quote and bid your job and it does not have this, it's your responsibility to figure this in your bid and put it in there. The electrical, if you're not a licensed electrician, the HVAC board won't hold you accountable for that. We might slide it to Charles over to the electrical side, but on the walkway and the platform, we will hold them accountable for ensuring that they can get a solid 2 foot wide walkway with a 30 by 30 working platform in front of that appliance.
Let me make sure I understand. Retrofit or new construction, this applies to both.
Correct.
You sure need to put that in your price before you start quoting, don't you?
Yeah, but especially the price of plywood today.
And here's this unobstructed passageway.
Yes, that's the premise of the crawl box, as they would say. That if you're on your knees crawling, and this happens sometimes where you have to bring a duct up and over that walkway. This is what they want. They want it 30 inches, above that where you can crawl under it. So if when you're running your duct work on new construction, or if it's a retrofit, and maybe you add duct work and you have to cross over, that's going to limit your length of how far you can place that appliance at that point. If all you're going to have is a 30-inch height, you've just restricted yourself. That will stay at the 20-foot minimum from the scuttle opening.
And you know, when I think about this, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. You can say, those doggone inspectors, they don't get up here and they don't have to do this and they don't have to quote. They're just being ridiculous. Or you can say, they're trying to help me make it where I can actually get back in there and work on that thing in the future.
And I need to bring up the point that the consumer themselves, whether they get up there or not, are supposed to have the accessibility to get up there. And that's what the solid walkway, the standing platform, whatever, they have that is supposed to be there for them to get up there, whether they will or not. But you got to have that safe platform walkway for that area.
Now we get to Charles. Charles, you get to wake up now.
Yes, sir.
We're now talking about the electrical that is required. You talk about that if you would, please.
Okay. It says a light switch near the opening. In our article, and you have a code book 21063.3, it talks about it can either be a pull chain or a light switch. Now, our requirements is that you have to have a light switch or a pull chain, they're close to the opening. But the key thing is you have to have a light, and that says the lighting outlet shall be provided at or near the equipment requiring servicing. So like if Tony wants to stick that furnace 50 feet in, you're probably going to have two lights, unless that's a tall ceiling where it can give you enough illumination. Now, our code does not get into how much illumination it takes. Here's a big deal that's came out in the 2017. It is required, let me back up. There's been a requirement for many years that you have to have a receptacle outlet within 25 feet of the unit for servicing, whether it be an AC unit on the outside, condenser, furnace, air handler, or whatever. You have to have a receptacle. The 2017 code changed that to where that the receptacle and the light under the house in a crawl space area has to be GFCI protected. That came about in the 17 code. On a construction site, industrial site today, on construction, the lights don't have to be GFCI, but because of deaths that have happened from broken bulbs, now that light and that receptacle in a crawl space has to be GFCI. Only in the crawl space, not in the attic.
Okay, so in the crawl space now, when a person goes in and they're going to change out a furnace or air handler, and that house is put there in the 80s, this may be the first time anything has changed. Does that mean that the HVAC person is going to be responsible for putting in that GFCI fixture and the GFCI outlet?
Well, we haven't really got into that, but now on the change out, you are upgrading your equipment under the floor or you're adding new equipment. So at that point, it has changed. That's something that you brought up a good point. We really have not got into enforcement on that because let's face it, most people are not going to call us to ask pull a permit or call us out in rural areas. Hey, we just put a new furnace in. This needs to be put in there. But my concern is if it's not there, then if we go out, if there was an accident or we get called back or if a home inspector shows up, at that point, we would have to get involved because it has changed from what the original design of the house was.
And I guess technically that would have to be an electrician to do that change out. Is that correct for the electrical?
Yeah, and Mr. Hunt, I went back and looked. We have an air conditioning electrician license, and it specifically states about change out and running new wiring stuff to the furnace and the air handler and stuff like that. But I'm going to say this, if I go out on a job site and everything's installed properly according to minimum standards, National Electrical Code, that receptacle's GFCI, that light in the crawl space got a guard on it, and it's GFCI protected, I am tickled to death. But
Ditto.
if that's something that's wrong, now we got an issue.
Yeah. Okay, so that you mentioned that AC electrical license. How hard is that to get?
all that's required is if a guy's got 2 years of having HVAC experience, or if he has a Class A or B, whatever y'all call it. Basically, we just require 2 years of experience. Just give us a call or go to our webpage and download an application. Or if anybody has any trouble, just holler at me and I'll be glad to get one out to them.
Is there a test for that?
Yes, there is a test. The COVID stuff, we are limited, but we do have, currently we use a company called Pro, and they do have online where you can actually take it from home if you have a webcam and your desk is not jumped up like mine where they can keep an eye on what you're doing. So anyway.
You know, we're now at 20 minutes and we've got to stop because we tell people that we're going to be in and out by 20. So Tony, Charles, thank y'all so much for today. And for those of you that have been listening in, you can contact us at arhvacr.org. We appreciate you very much. We hope you have a great day. Bye now.
Thank y'all.
See you later.